Today we will show a practical, decision-oriented way to select a KRAIS tube expander for the job, from small coolers through standard heat exchangers and large condensers to boiler tooling and specialist applications. What is tube expanding? Tube rolling, also referred to as tube expanding, is a controlled plastic deformation of the tube end inside a tube sheet or seat, creating a tight, repeatable tube-to-tube sheet joint. KRAIS expanders are manufactured from high-grade tool steel, utilizing modern heat treatment and a precise grinding process to ensure maximum durability and performance. Tool selection is driven primarily by tube outside diameter, OD, wall thickness, tube material, required roll length, and the joint type, parallel expansion, controlled taper, expansion with flaring, pre-weld expansion, or additional mechanical locking features. Coolers and small heat exchangers. In small diameter work, process stability and repeatability matter most, especially with thin wall tubing and high tube counts. KRAIS 900 series expanders cover very small tube diameters for fast, precise parallel rolling in typical heat transfer equipment. Use this series when you're working on small OD tubing and need consistent, cylindrical expansion in standard joints. Typical environments include HVAC, oil coolers, compact exchangers, and fine tube condensers. KRAIS 1300 series expanders are intended for small tubing where additional reach and a longer roll zone are required, for example with thicker tube sheets or deeper seating geometries. It is a strong choice for small coolers, especially in service and retubing work where access and geometry drive the need for extended reach. Standard heat exchangers and condensers. In this segment, you will most often see tube ODs from 1/2 inch up to 1.5 inches, a wide range of tube sheet thicknesses, and significantly more variation in materials. KRAIS 800 series expanders are the baseline general-purpose family for the most common tube sizes in exchangers and condensers. Choose it for typical diameters and standard tube sheet thicknesses when you need efficient, uniform rolling without special joint requirements. The KRAIS 805 is the 5 rolls series designed for thin wall tubes and tubes that are more sensitive to deformation. 5 rolls distribute forming forces more evenly, reducing the risk of ovality and local distortion, particularly in very thin wall tubing. KRAIS 1200 series expanders address mainstream diameters, but for thick tube sheets, cases where a standard expander does not provide adequate reach. In practice, reach variants are selected to match tube sheet thickness, and the cage length and tooling geometry directly define the effective roll zone. KRAIS 1200-5 is the 5 rolls series expanders combine extended reach with a 5-roll forming profile. Select it when the tube sheet is thick and, at the same time, the tube material or wall thickness requires gentler, more controlled expansion. For all of the 800 and 1200 series, we offer various rolls, shapes like double radius for step expanding or expanding after welding. KRAIS 8012 series expanders are intended for larger tube diameters in heat exchanger work, where the 800 and 1200 ranges are no longer sufficient, but you still require controlled expansion for exchanger joints. The KRAIS F600 series performs tube expansion and end flaring in a single operation. Use it where the specification calls for a flared tube end as a mechanical feature, or where you want to avoid variability associated with a separate flaring step. The KRAIS TAC series delivers short, controlled, conical expansion as preparation for welding. It is used in rolled and welded joints to remove clearance, stabilize the tube, and improve weld conditions. The conical profile provides maximum expansion close to the tube end. Boilers and fired equipment. In boiler tooling and advanced applications, many product families are not defined by one fixed OD range. The final configuration depends on the roller and mandrel selection for the specific tube. For this group, confirmation in the selection process is part of the correct workflow. The KRAIS KS family covers classic boiler tube expanding tasks, typically used for reliable tube installation as well as repair and re-rolling operations. The PZ series is the fundamental tube expander designed for basic maintenance and production of boilers and furnaces. This tool provides parallel rolling through an integrated thrust bearing and is engineered for expansion based on the specific length of the rollers. KRAIS FTKSL combines tube expansion with controlled flaring in boiler applications, using an adjustable stop to maintain consistent flare geometry across the tube field. This tool is recommended for less experienced boiler makers who may find simultaneous rolling and flaring with KS expanders challenging. The KRAIS P2 series provides adjustability for heavy tube, suitable both for fabrication and for service corrections of existing rolled joints. KRAIS Universal Beading Rolling Expander is a combined tool for expansion and beading, forming a bead as a mechanical lock from the protruding tube end. Use it where the joint standard requires beading instead of welding, and where a one-pass operation improves repeatability and productivity. KRAIS Collins type expanders use a non-parallel roller geometry to generate a controlled taper. In practice, they are often selected for service work where local sealing or correction is needed without over-expanding the full seating length, for example, on thin tube sheets or single leak repairs. Other applications and specialist tools. KRAIS refinery expanders are intended for large, heavy wall tubes in heater and furnace tube seats, including cracking furnace in oil refineries. Depending on configuration, they can perform straight expansion or expansion with flaring, and selection is driven by seat geometry and the applicable maintenance specification. KRAIS sugar refinery expanders are typically configured to match the equipment geometry, often with a fixed roll length and constraints driven by limited access and internal clearances. OD range depends on the ordered configuration. These tools are always custom manufactured according to the engineering drawings of the evaporators, sugar boiling pans. KRAIS NE notching and expanding combines expansion with notching or mechanical locking features to retain the tube on both sides of a thin tube sheet. It is selected where tube loosening is a known risk in thin sheet constructions, always aligned with the equipment specification and acceptance criteria. KRAIS step-by-step rolling is used for very thick tube sheets. The thrust collar is repositioned along the cage, and rolling is executed in controlled increments. It is applied where tube sheets are exceptionally thick, and repeatability is required while managing process time and forming loads. KRAIS PSE is used for sizing, calibrating, and expanding pipe ends to achieve correct fit for brazing or slip joint assembly. Maximum capacity is up to 8-inch OD, while the minimum depends on the selected tool version. Linson expanders are used to expand a tube end so another tube of the same OD can be inserted and brazed, without a separate fitting. This approach is common in refrigeration and HVAC, especially where space is limited and simplified tube-to-tube joints are preferred. KRAIS baffle tube expanders are long-reach tools for rolling on internal support plates, not only at the tube sheet, but also at support sheets or baffles deeper inside the bundle. SR refers to short-reach solutions used where geometry limits stroke, bends, U-tubes, or very short straight sections. OD range depends on the ordered configuration. KRAIS 5-roll expanders with a nylon bush reduce the risk of surface marking ahead of the working cage. They are used where the tube material is surface sensitive and quality requirements are high, commonly with titanium tubing. If you take one principle from this video, let it be this: selection starts with tube OD and joint geometry, and it is finalized based on material, wall thickness, required control level, and reach, including whether the joint requires parallel expansion, controlled taper, flaring, pre-weld expansion, or beading. If you need selection support, send tube OD, wall thickness, material, tube sheet thickness, and the required joint type, and we will propose the correct configuration. If you cannot find a suitable tube expander for your application, provide the specifications and we will design and manufacture a custom tool. In this video, we reference KRAIS drive units using 3 primary setups as examples: the K20 for smaller tube diameters, the K50 for mainstream industrial exchanger work, and the K70, our most powerful pneumatic drive designed for heavy-duty applications in large boilers and furnaces. However, our product range includes a very wide selection of rolling motors to suit any application. We specifically highlight our drives equipped with digital controllers such as the TS Mini, TS2000 and TS3000. Thanks to advanced digital analysis, these units help maintain exceptionally precise rolling parameters and full repeatability.